Hello, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us today. I want to welcome you to SommCon's discussion on traversing Chile and Argentina. My name is Michelle Meter. I'm the founder of SommCon, and if you are joining us again, you know that we have been producing a series of discussions with leaders within the global wine industry now since about March, when the pandemic really hit the United States and begged us to really look at varied opportunities to bring different discussions to our industry. And we have been really grateful for the opportunity to partner with organizations like the Tasting Panel and the SOMM Journal, and have the opportunity to share time with winemakers and leaders from throughout our industry from literally all points of the world. So today we're really thrilled to be joined by an expert panel of producers. I think you're in for a treat. It's going to be just a fabulous discussion. A few points, a couple of housekeeping items that I want to talk about. And reminders. There is a chat function that you can enable that you should see at the bottom of your screen. We encourage you to have some dialogue with our panelists as we go through our discussion today. Feel free to include any questions that you might have for individuals, especially after they finish their presentations. Feel free to go ahead and participate in the dialogue in our chat. If you have a question that's more for the entire panel, we will conclude our discussion today with a live Q&A. So feel free to add those discussions actually into the Q&A, and we'll get to those toward the end of our chat. We are recording today's session, and it will be made available in the SommCon Resource Center, and we will send out a broadcast notification to you, so that way if you have a colleague who maybe perhaps wasn't able to join us today, that they can do so following our discussion. And with that, I'm just going to quickly turn it over to Lars. We've got a really good discussion here for you, and he is going to lead us through. Again, Lars is with the Tasting Panel and the SOMM Journal. Lars, thanks again for being here and for your partnership.
Thank you very much, Michelle. It's an honor to be here on behalf of Meredith May, our publisher and editor-in-chief. I want to thank everybody for being here. You know, I've been working with winemakers for better part of 3 decades. And I have to say, I always compare winemakers to chefs and IT guys. They're much more comfortable being behind the scenes. But I think Zoom makes it a little bit easier for them to come out because they know they can run right back into the winery as soon as we're done here. So I want to thank each and every one of these rock stars for being out here today. My own experience with South America goes back to the 1980s. When I first started visiting there and hearing things about the wineries. And, you know, those were the days when the Chileans said that every vintage was the same, and the Argentines said that we don't have to prune. Things have come a very long way. I remember the first time I landed in Santiago, there was a dirt road from the airport to the capital. The next time I went, it was a short 5-minute highway ride. So things have developed tremendously, and especially in the recognition of the different terroirs that nature has bestowed upon either side of the Andes. It's a beautiful area, and I'm really anxious to hear what these gentlemen have to say, so I'll shut up. And I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Jeff Mausbach from Tinto Negro in Argentina. This is a project that Jeff started himself along with a partner, and I'll let Jeff tell you a little bit more about that. But I think it's fun that you're a Chicago boy. We'll work our way into the accents, and we'll start with a good Chicago accent. And I gather you came to Argentina for love, not only love of wine, but true romance, having met your Argentine wife in Italy. So tell us a little bit about Tinto Negro and your terroir.
Thank you, Lars. Thank you, everyone, SOMM Journal, SommCon, and Tasting Panel for including us in this great webinar. Thanks to everyone for signing up and coming to share some ideas with us. Yes, I'm originally from the Midwest by way of Chicago, Illinois, and I've been here in Argentina for over 30 years and been in the Argentine wine industry for 20 years, and I'm one of the owners and founders of Tinto Negro. Tinto Negro is a small little boutique Malbec specialist based in Mendoza, Argentina. And what we do is we specialize in our signature varietal, Malbec. but we do it with a bit of a twist, which is to make different Malbecs from different appellations at different altitudes and engage in different soil types and different temperature profiles to show how Malbec changes and how Malbec really can improve as we focus in on ever higher altitude, higher quality vineyard sites. So the portfolio is really kind of staircase up the Andes, showing how we increase altitude and can get better quality fruit and can make better wines. So what I had kind of planned for my 10 minutes was to first show you a little presentation of the winery, which will talk a little bit about the things that we do. And then I wanted to focus in on what I think is one of the most important things happening in Argentina today, which is the further definition of our appellation system. So we do a lot of work in one particular appellation where we have an estate vineyard, which is called Paraje Altamira. So I have a small little presentation to show you a little bit about Paraje Altamira. So right now, let's do the screen sharing. And Lars, you can tell me if that comes up fine.
I will. We're not there yet. I see you've shared. There you go. You're on.
Okay. So I'll stop this as we go along. This is Tinto Negro. So here are the principal owners, myself there on the left. In the middle is Alejandro Sejanovic, longtime friend and colleague. I worked for many years at Catena Zapata, helping to manage all of their international business for about 15 years. Alejandro was a longtime friend and colleague of mine at Catena. He was vineyard director for almost 20 years. So we became close friends at Catena, and in 2010, we left Catena to start our own project, Tinto Negro. So the rest of the video is going to show you, it's a Google Earth video, so it's going to show you some really good mappage and orientation. So here's Argentina on the southern end of the South American continent. There's Mendoza on the far western side. It's the California of Argentine winemaking. We make 70% of all the wine that's produced in Argentina. Mendoza is a desert, continental desert, so it's basically our wine growing is done in oases. These are the 3 oases that we work with in Mendoza. So we're going to kind of run through our portfolio, which will run through a little bit of the main appellations that are available in Argentina. So here you have 2 of them, Maipú and Luján de Cuyo. That kind of big urban center to the north of Maipú is the city of Mendoza. So these are our two of the main wine making regions, and together they're the kind of mid-level valley, and they're known as what we call the Primera Zona. So this is where our portfolio starts, and it starts with our introductory wine called Tinto Negro Luján de Cuyo from Mendoza. So this area has deep kind of clay and silty soils, a fairly warm temperature profile. So we feel it makes a great introductory, easy drinking Malbec, something that's kind of, like I say, for everyday drinking. So that's our introductory portfolio. We then move to there, that's the Uco Valley. So that's moving, that first area of Primera Zona was at 3,000 feet elevation. We then move up to the Uco Valley, which goes from 3,500 up to 5,000 feet elevation. So that's the Uco Valley. We have 3 counties in the Uco Valley, San Carlos, Tunuyán, and Tupungato. And our next wine comes from a blend of those areas. This is called Tinto Negro Uco Valley. And so this is a great introduction to the Uco Valley. We get cooler temperatures up here. We have poorer, rockier, sandier soils. So it makes a great introduction to higher elevation, cool climate Malbec. Then we continue. We're going to go into Tunuyán, and we're going to hit an appellation that's called Los Chacajes on the higher level of Tunuyán. This is almost 3,800 feet elevation. Los Chacajes has great rocky soils. As you get higher up in the mountains, you get rockier mountain soils. So here in Chacajes, we make 2 wines. The first is an exception to our Malbec rule. This is Cabernet Franc. This is an Uco Valley level Cabernet Franc, which really loves the rocky soils in this area. So this is the exception to our Malbec rule. And then we make another wine from this area. So here you can see much more surface stones, 30 to 40% surface stones. This is the second wine that we make from this area. It's called Limestone Black. It's a Malbec driven blend. and it is a co-fermentation of Malbec with Cabernet Franc. It's about roughly around 90% Malbec, around 10% Cabernet Franc in that wine, and that's the second wine we produce from Los Chacajes. These first three wines or four wines were all from they're all from wines, vineyards that we manage, and we purchase the fruit. We actually get paid in fruit because Alejandro is a vineyard consultant. He manages those four vineyards, and because of his close relationship with those growers, he actually gets paid in fruit. So we get pick of the litter top lots from those vineyards, which go into our wine. So I like to think of them as quasi-estate vineyards, not vineyards that we own, but certainly vineyards that we manage and get the best lots of. Now we're going to move into our two estate vineyards. So there we've gone to the south. This is San Carlos, and here you can see the appellation of Paraje Altamira, one of the top appellations, I think, in Argentina. And we have an estate vineyard here, which is called Finca La Escuela. That's Finca La Escuela. It's called Finca La Escuela because this little area that you see right here, that is a 100-year-old one-room schoolhouse that is still an anchor to the rural community. We do a lot of work with that school. We donate a lot of their materials. We donated some additional land to them to build a daycare center with other wineries and growers in the region. So it's a big integral part of the property. And so, you know, we feel it's appropriate to call it Finca La Escuela. It's about an 8-hectare property. One of the things that we're going to get into in the second presentation, which is very cool, which I'll show you right here, which we love about Altamira and we love about this vineyard, soil diversity. So those different spots that are marked on the screen there, those are all different soil types within that small 8-hectare vineyard. And it's the blending of the Malbec fruit on those different soil types, which we feel gives Finca La Escuela a very unique character. So we have sandy soils, we have silty soils, we have gravelly soils, and we have stony soils with rocky limestone driven minerality. So the blend of those soils is what really makes Finca La Escuela something unique. What we also do is not only a single vineyard wine, but a series of single soil wines. So we choose one day out of the year, out of the harvest, and we harvest a small batch of each soil by itself. And we make small micro vinifications of each one of those soils. So these are the different labels. So I make a limo, which is silt. We make a piedra, which is limestone driven soil. We make a grava, which is gravel soil. And we make an arena, which is sandy soil. So that kind of completes what we do at Finca La Escuela. And then we're going to go now to our last kind of icon vineyard, which is in an appellation right next door in La Consulta. And this is Old Vine Malbec. So this is a vineyard that's called 1955. And this vineyard was planted in 1955. So it is a 65-year-old vineyard. And this is Old Vine Malbec. We think one of the great national treasures of Argentina. Not a lot of Old Vine Malbec out there. When you can find it, grab it, nurture it, make something very, very special. Very small berries, but with great balance and acidity. So this is our icon wine called Vineyard 1955. Okay, so that's a little bit of the portfolio. Now I'm going to share a screen to are you seeing that next one up there, Lars, that says Finca La Escuela?
Nope, I'm still on 1955.
Okay, let's close that then, and I'll have to share a screen with something else. Share screen with that. Share. Does that come up?
Yep.
Okay. So what we're going to do here is look at Finca La Escuela. So we'll continue with the mappage and give you a little bit of a look at all of the appellations in the Uco Valley. So this is Tupungato with San Jose, El Parral, Gualtallarí. You then move into Tupungato with San Pablo, Los Árboles, Los Chacajes, Campo de los Andes, Vista Flores. You then come down here to San Carlos. You have Paraje Altamira, La Consulta, El Cepillo, and El Indio. So that's a good look at all of the different appellations that are in the Uco Valley. So we have alluvial soils in the Uco Valley. And the 4 ones in San Carlos come from what's called the alluvial ejection cone. That is from where the Tupungato or the Tunujan River comes out of, which is right there. So that's where the alluvialness happened, and they kind of ejected the soil material down the mountain. So you can see the slope here, and according to your slope is going to be your position on the slope is going to be where you're going to see the different types of soil types. So when you're higher up, you get great rocky soils. Then as you go down the slope, you get some mixture of sand. You get down here, you get a little bit more silt and sand, and on the very bottom, you get a lot of clay in your soil. So according to where you are on that alluvial slope is going to define your soil profile. So here is a look at that with some pictures. Here's the ejection cone. This is Paraje Altamira, Cepillo, La Consulta. So you can see the soil type here in Paraje Altamira, lots of rocky limestone. Also lots of, in Cepillo next door, quite a bit of stone. But when you get down mountain and you get into La Consulta del Cepillo, you can see there's a lot less rock. It's a lot deeper soil and more sandy and silty. We don't see any clay in any of these soil profiles. That's even further down mountain where we don't have viticulture. That far down mountain is where we have a lot of our agriculture. So there's horticulture and fruticulture down there. We have really deep clay soils. So here's a look at what those soil types look like.
You're at your 2 minutes, Jeff.
Okay, so here's La Consulta, where you've got just a lot of deep soil. Here you have a mixture of rock and sand on the top, and here you have a lot of different rock and sand. So here's a good look at a Calicata soil pit for Paraje Altamira. You can see all of that rocky limestone. And here's what I was talking about in terms of soil diversity. So Altamira has a very undulating subsoil, and so the alluvials came and filled in the bottom, the bottom parts of the waves there. So depending on where you're at, you're going to have here lots of rocky topsoil. If you go a little bit further in, you get a little bit of deeper soil. If you go into the over here into the real bottom part, you get lots of soil with rocks on the top. So that's where we get our soil diversity. It's from that undulating subsoil filled in by those alluvials. So that's one of the things we were talking about with Finca La Escuela, that we have all of those different soil types. Here's a picture of this of the school, and here's the vineyard with all of those different soil types. There's a close-up shot at Finca La Escuela. This is the blend of all of those soil types, harvested over a 2-week period, and a blend of Malbec from all those different soils. Then we have silt, we have stone, we have gravel, and we have sand. And for those of you that might be interested, they come in a really nice 5-bottle pack. So they're also available throughout the United States in single 6-bottle packs. We are imported by Vineyard Brands. We have great distribution throughout the United States. So I think that's about it. How'd I do?
You did great, Jeff. Thank you.
10 minutes?
Hold on. Oh, yes. And then some. But we're good.
All right. Thank you again very much, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks to Lars and to Michelle, all of the sponsors. It was a pleasure to join you today. Enjoy the rest of the tastings.
Thank you, Jeff. Efrain. So now we're going to be speaking with Germán de Cesare from Trivento, also in Argentina. Our first 4 wineries are going to be in Argentina. Germán, it's hard for me to tell. Jeff, you got to stop sharing your screen as much as we love you. It's hard for me to tell if Germán, what he loves more, whether it's wine, winemaking, Argentine folk music, or playing the guitar and singing that Argentine folk music. Is that true, Germán?
It's true. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to share this seminar with these colleagues and friends related with the wine. So I'm very happy to speak about my experience in terms of Malbec. So my idea is to speak about a little bit the variety Malbec, and then especially focus in Luján de Cuyo. Recently you hear to beautiful English coming from Jeff. Now you will hear a Mendocinian English from me. I will share my presentation. You see?
Yep, if you can go to full screen on your presentation, you should be good.
Okay.
Yep, we see. Yep. Good.
Okay. As I told you, the idea is speak a little bit about Malbec. You know, Malbec is synonym of Argentina. For us, is our queen, is the best variety planted in Argentina. As variety, it's a plastic variety. It has a lot of diversity, expressed very well in each place that you have planted Malbec. Always the wines coming from Malbec from different parts of Argentina, from the north and to the south, you always have very good wines, different qualities, but always very, very good wines. And that speaks about that adaptability and the diversity that this variety gives. No? In terms of color, Malbec is a variety that it has very powerful color. In terms of nose, Malbec move between the red fruit to the black fruit. Then appear some flowers that similar than violets. And in terms of mouth, you have Malbec that are very round, velvety tannins, and you have Malbec that are very juicy on the palate. You have Malbec that have a lot of tension, and especially when you go to the altitude and the very stony soils, start to appear more oysters aromas and more tension and more juiciness and more stretch Malbec. So that gives you an idea how the Malbec can be different, can has different phases depending on the place where are planted. In terms of numbers, we are the big producer of Malbec. We have almost 100,000 acres planted in Argentina, and 86% is planted in Mendoza. Apart from that, 70% of our total production is located in Mendoza. To speak about a specific Luján de Cuyo, that is one of the places that I love a lot. Actually, I live in Luján de Cuyo. I like that you have in your mind 2 or 3 important information. Number one, Luján de Cuyo is a very, very beautiful place with a long tradition in terms of viticulture. It was one of the first places where the immigrant arrived at the beginning of the century and started to plant in Malbec and other varieties. But really, Luján de Cuyo is the place where the Malbec started to be the Malbec that you know today. It's plenty of tradition, it's plenty of legacy, it's plenty of old vines. In Luján de Cuyo are located a lot of micro parcel, a lot of small vineyard with 2 or 3 hectares that you can feel a lot of passion of love coming from the owners. The owners love this place because this vineyard were planted by the grandfather. So there is a special passion. Here you have a picture of one of these vineyards. This vineyard is coming from our vineyard for Eolo, our icon wine. As you see, it's a typical picture with a lot of Mediterranean culture. No, you see the olive trees, the low vines with the flat irrigation, with the canopy system, with Gouillot, the French system. That is very traditional in this area. So number one, that the information that I want that you recognize is the Luján de Cuyo is a very, very traditional area in terms of Malbec variety, yes? Then here I choose another picture about Luján de Cuyo, and this is one of our vineyards. And here you can see more or less what is our land, no? All our viticulture is coming from our place. The mountain, the Andes mountain, the water that we use is coming from the snow that we receive in the winter time. The altitude and the soil are coming from the mountain. So most of the soil located in Luján de Cuyo are alluvial soils coming from the alluvial fan of Mendoza River. The continental climate is winter very cold, summer very hot. The altitude is the element that regulates the climate in the harvest time, for example, with very nice, cool nights and nice days during the day to ripe the grape. And another important thing is that Mendoza is very dry, no more than 200 millimeters every year, and we have high sun exposure. That, in generally speaking, that are all the elements that regulate the climate and the soil in Luján de Cuyo. Now, here in a map, you have Luján de Cuyo area. You can see Mendoza River crossing in the middle of the Luján de Cuyo area. And for me, you can divide Luján de Cuyo in two important regions. In the north side of Mendoza River, the area that we call Las Compuertas and Vistalba, they are a small district. And in the south, you have Pedriel and Agrelo as main district that you can see most of the vineyard planted. The most important difference between north and south for me is that you have, as I told you, alluvial soils, but especially in the north bank of Mendoza River, Vistalba and Las Compuertas, you have more frank, sandy soil with different level of stones, alluvial stone that appears more close to the surface or more deep. But when you go to the south, in Pedriel and Agrelo, you start to see more percentage of clay. Basically, the main difference that the Malbec coming from the north and the south, you will see in the mouth. Normally, Malbec coming from Las Compuertas and Vistalba are more structured with a lot of more powerful tannins. But when you go to the south, because the clay soil, you start to see more round soft tannins, not many powerful tannins, no? The idea is that in Luján you have a lot of different conditions that give you different profile of Malbec. But in my opinion and my experience, the main difference are located in the mouth. In the north side, you have more structure. In the south, you have more round tannin and more soft tannins. Always regulated by Mendoza River that is incredible in the night. You feel the fresh air coming from the mountain, and that is very important for the thermal amplitude. I mean, the difference between the day and night. All these elements, at the beginning I told you the tradition, the oldest vines, the passion and love of the people who live there and cultivate these vines. And then this mix of soil, altitude, and weather make that Luján de Cuyo is a really treasure for us. It's a miracle for me because all this combination of all these elements not happening in different parts of the world. And in Mendoza, we have the opportunity to enjoy this place and of course study this place in order to potential the quality of these wines. One example of this wine, I recommend.
Un minuto,
Un minuto, okay.
Yep.
One wine that I recommend to taste about Luján is our Iolo, that is our icon wine. Received many nice awards, but this Iolo expressed very, very nice the typicity of Luján de Cuyo and especially of Vistalba. And finally, to speak about diversity of Malbec, this is the year Trivento was founded in 1996 by Concheturos Group. And this is all the vineyards that Trivento has, 10 vineyards located in different parts of Mendoza with more than 1,600 hectares, and give us the possibility to make a special blend of Malbec with Bonarda coming from Maipú and Syrah coming from Uco Valley. This wine shows you the diversity of Malbec using for wines coming from blended varieties. So this Malbec is 70% Malbec, 20% Bonarda, and 10% Syrah. And it's a modern style of wine that shows you the typicity of Malbec combined with some marmalade coming from Bonarda and acidity from Bonarda and a spiciness coming from Syrah. So I speak about one area, Luján de Cuyo, the typical and classic area for Malbec, and different areas that give you the possibility to mix this variety, a beautiful variety that is Malbec, with other varieties that grow very well in Mendoza. So thank you.
Gracias,
For
Herman.
listening to me. Hope you enjoyed this presentation, and thank you.
Well done. Appreciate that very much. So now we're going to speak with Daniel P. from Trapiche, a very historic, important winery in the area, and yet at the same time, a great pioneer. Daniel, I know that you have had a tremendous amount of experience with different terroirs, and you've sort of expanded the scope of that a little bit as well with heading toward the ocean. So would you tell us a little bit about your work at Trapiche and your focus on the terroirs? And I think, yep, we're good. Go ahead, Daniel.
Okay, I will try to share. I am not very good with technology, but I will try to do my best. You know, we had some problems yesterday. So,
you sound good.
Okay, here we are. Let's go.
Great. Just put it in presentation mode.
This is what we have. This is Trapiche.
Good.
Okay, Trapiche is one of the, let's say, one of the oldest wineries in Argentina, still running. Was founded in 1883 by, you know, some historical criollos that were people that were sons of Spanish and mixed with some native people here in Argentina, we call criollos. And they decided to set the vineyard and the wineries in the surroundings of the city of Mendoza, where, well, we were speaking about earlier about the Primera Zona, where all the immigrants settled the vineyards in the early beginning when the industry started to produce wines. And you see the winery is nearby the railway, no? And it is important, the railway, for reaching the market, which was Buenos Aires, the main market for the production. And the wine was shipped from Mendoza to Buenos Aires in barrels. And the reason why was, you know, the other day in the American Association of Economics of Wine, I saw statistics of what we used to drink before we set the industry in Argentina. And Argentina was the second destination for the Bordeaux wines at that time. So people in Buenos Aires used to drink a lot of Bordeaux wine, and that's the reason why the president of Argentina at that time decided to improve the vineyards in the region of Mendoza. We had people coming, immigrants are coming from Europe, and there was a famous viticulturist named Michel Puget who brought to Argentina all the material that was planted at that time in Bordeaux pre-phylloxera. So in Bordeaux, before of the phylloxera disease, Malbec was very important in the blends. So that's the reason why we have Malbec spread in our vineyards in Mendoza and in Argentina, but because Malbec was very important in the Bordeaux blends. So having this little history and the reason why we have Malbec here, and it's a pre-phylloxeric Malbec, original material from Bordeaux, and that's the main reason why we have such beautiful assortment of DNA material of Malbec that you couldn't find in other places in the world. Well, Trapiche has a very wide portfolio of wines from very basic wines up to very top-end wines. Based in Malbec, is the largest producer of Malbec in the world, for sure. And but we are very happy to work with our own production, which means that we have something like 1,100 hectares of vineyards. But we work a lot with a lot of producers, with a lot of independent growers. In Argentina, there are like 22,000 producers, 220,000 hectares. So the average ratio of each vineyard is about 10 hectares. So there are a lot of independent producers no, and only 700 wineries producing, among 750 wineries. So mostly of the wines in Argentina are made with grapes coming from independent growers. So in 2003, we decided to create this, what we call Terroir series. When I became the head winemaker for Trapiche, working together with Marcelo Belmonte, which is our agronomist. So I was visiting the different growers that would work with us, and I found out that terroir is the worm or climate on the soil, and everybody is focused on that. But for me, there is an important factor, which is the human factor. It is the people who decided to transform this landscape in here and interpret this here in a different way. Every time I say, you can have a piece of meat, the same piece of meat from the same cow, and give it to, say, 3 different winemakers or chefs or whatever, and you can have 3 different kind of asados. Everybody has their own interpretation, or even with the bread or the raw material that the chefs has. So for me, the interpretation of the growers from their vineyard, their particular vineyard, is the most terroir wine. So we started 17 years ago. With that, I met a lot of people. The motor was this guy, Felipe Benicio Villafañe. I met him, I was very young, you can see, 17 years ago, or younger. But Felipe was 103 years old at that time. And he was running his vineyard, and I said, this guy who planted the vineyard in 1945, and he's about to leave this level in the earth, he never saw a bottle of wine with his name in the label. So why we are not producing wine with the name of the growers, of those particular growers? And that's why I convinced the people in the marketing people, and we started to produce wine. So Felipe Villafañe, 103 years old, Vittorio Coletti, an Italian immigrant, planted a vineyard in 1947 as well. His nieces, Cristina. Well, another very important guy, which is Fausto Orellana. And here we have Jorge Miralles and his wife. All of them were participants, and they are the people of Finca Ambrosia. All of them were selected. So we select among the more than 700 growers that work with us, the 70 that produces Malbec, and among the 70, we select the 3 best for our wines. And this is the most important project I made for Trapiche at the early beginning, and recovering the Malbec from the people who were actually running their vineyards and producing grapes and their name on the bottle. So this is a very good challenge for us to work and work together with them. It's a very nice thing that we're doing.
It's fantastic. Hay 2 minutos.
2 minutos. Okay. We are moving away from Mendoza, and everybody was speaking in the Andes, and we move away from 1,400 kilometers to Santa Isabel in Mar del Plata, nearby the sea, the South Atlantic Ocean, where we have a completely different landscape. This is what we have there. It's a dry farm vineyard where we produce mostly white wines, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Albarino, Pinot Bianco. And in this particular vineyard, where you have a different type of landscape and type of soil, more loessic than alluvial. This is the type of soil that we do have there. And it was formed by the wind and by volcanic ashes that make a carpet in the Pampa. And when the Andes went up, we have a lot of volcanic activity, and all the ashes went to the pampas and make like a carpet. And you see that we have like 4 different types of soils in the same place with this organic and the silt and the calcium, which is more or less what we call calcium carbonate and sandy loam. This is a typical soil from there. And this is our winery, 1,400 kilometers from here. Though Argentina is not only the mountains and the alluvial soils, we have another thing, and this is what we want to show you. Different place. This is something that we don't need to irrigate. It's a dry farm nearby the sea. So the ocean wines that we are producing in our country. I hope I did it in the right time.
You did it perfectly. There goes the alarm. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Lars, Michelle, and Shelby, and all the people who just attending.
All righty. Just take off your share screen. There you go. Perfect. So next up is Alejandro Pepa from Eléstico in Argentina. Alejandro, I think your motto is your eagerness to learn. And you've been doing quite a bit of that since you joined Eléstico in 2000. You're in Calchaquí, which is a very high altitude area. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about that and seeing you on the tower. Is that what I am correct in understanding?
Yes, hola Lars.
Hola.
Buenos días para todos.
Yes.
Thank you for the invitation. Hello everyone. Yes, I'm Alejandro Pepa. I sit here in Cafayate, in Calchaquí Valley, and my idea for this 10 minutes is show you some part of this beautiful valley and share some information. I changed the camera, and in this moment I am in the top of the winery, in the tower. I work in this beautiful winery called Eléstico. Yes, Eléstico was founded in 1892 by Don David Michel. We have a wine in his honor. And this beautiful winery is located in this beautiful valley, yes, called Calchaquí Valley. This Calchaquí Valley is located in the northwest of Argentina, approximately 1,000 kilometers north to Mendoza, near the Andes mountain, and is formed by these 2 mountains. This is the east of the valley. This mountain called Aconquija mountain, and separate us from Salta and Tucumán. Another part is very green, very rain, and this mountain gives us all the protection from the humidity that another part. And this is the north part of the valley, and this is another mountain called Quilmes mountain. And after that Quilmes mountain, we have all our vineyard in the foot of this Quilmes mountain, and we obtain all the condition, the rocky soil, the mineral soil came from this Quilmes mountain. And after, behind the Quilmes mountain is a little valley, and after that appear the Andes mountain and Chile. This is a typical day here in Calchaquí Valley. This is the typical condition. Very blue sky, very sun days. This is very typical from Calchaquí Valley. All this valley is continental weather. We have continental weather similar to the desert. In the summer season, our temperature is between 30 degrees Celsius approximately during the day, but during the night is near to 10 degrees Celsius. Then we have a lot of difference between the day and the night. And okay, we have 2 facilities here in Calchaquí Valley. This is downtown, is Cafayate. The key of the valley is the high altitude. This is one of the highest valley in the world, more than the 1,700 meters. Cafayate is located at 1,700 700 meters above sea level. And we have another facility to south, 80 kilometers to south, called, in the same mountain, called Chañar Punco, at 2,000 meters above sea level. This very dry weather, you see, we have a rocky condition, poor soils, mineral soil. In some part here, more in the valley, more sandy, but when you go to the foot to the mountain, appear more rocky and calcareous mineral soils. Another characteristic of the valley is possible to see. It's very dry. It's the desert. We depend totally of the water from the dismelted water from the Andes and some water from underground. In El Esteco, we have different system of conduction. The traditional planting, some of these planting in 1940, 1945 year, very old vines. We irrigating flat irrigated, and we use drip irrigated too. Now, Lars, please, is possible to put my presentation, a little presentation, please?
Absolutely. I need you to take off your share screen, though.
Okay.
And I have your presentation. Can everybody see that? We've got the
full next, please.
Slide up. Great. So.
Okay. Next, please.
I'm trying.
Okay. Okay. This is a map of Argentina. It's possible to see the three main regions. Central region, Daniel speaks from, and Jerry from Mendoza. We are in the north part of Argentina, 1,000 kilometers north in the Calchaquí Valley. It's very limited terroir, Calchaquí Valley, only 2.5% of the total production of Argentina. And it's possible to see here our two facilities or our two vineyards, one in Chañar Punco, I spoke about that, 2,000 meters, very rocky soils, 70% of the soil is rocky and calcareous, 2,000 meters above sea level, and another here in Cafayate called El Esteco Cafayate at 1,700 meters. More than the 780 hectares between both. Then it's very exclusive valley, only 2.5% of the total production of Argentina. Next, Lars, please. Okay, this is a beautiful view of the characteristic of the Calchaquí Valley. Red mountain, dry weather, mineral mountain with red color, green color. It's a very beautiful, very high altitude. Next, please. This is some part of our vineyard and some special characteristic. In the summer season, we receive in summer season our precipitation, no more than the 200 millimeters a year of precipitation, very few quantities, really totally, this terroir is a desert, and our wine give this expression characteristic, the desert characteristic and the very high altitude characteristic. Next, please, Lars. It's possible to see here, I spoke about that, the two mountains, the narrow valley, Calchaquí Valley, between the Aconquija and Quilmes Mountain. The valley cross or run to north to south, is near 240 kilometers long. It's a very narrow valley with a microclimate. And in this picture, satellite pictures, it's possible to see the green part, all the precipitation is in this part, stop in the Aconquija Mountain, and cross the Aconquija Mountain very dry, and start all the desert from the Aconquija Mountain to Andes is very, very desert. Again, it's very isolated terroir, very far to the big cities, 3 hours by car from Salta, 4 hours by car from Tucumán. Then we are very isolated terroir. Okay, this is some of our soils. I spoke about that. Sandy, rocky, depend where we put our plant, our vineyards, but in general it's mineral soil, and our wine give this expression. Next, please, Lars. Okay, we spoke about that too. The sunny day, the high altitude. Calchaquí Valley represented one of the highest valley in the world. Again, this is the key of this valley, more than the 1,700 meters. And our wines express this condition. Wild wines, very expressive Torrontés, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc in the white varietals, and in the red grapes, our main grape is Malbec, absolutely, but Cabernet Sauvignon and Tannat give us a very good condition. The soil, the water, and the weather in general, we express it in these pictures. Next, please, Lars. Okay, return me, please.
Okay, which is good. You have less than a minute.
Okay, now I'm inside in the winery, because for me, Lars, the terroir of the weather condition, the soils, the climate, the precipitation, the high altitude is a very important part of the terroir. But for me, the people and the winemaking is very important too. It's part of the terroir. And we have in the Esteco all the facility in our two wineries, all the facility to produce and control very well our products. For me, it's very important all the process. We have our special barrel room, we have our tunnels, we have the concrete egg, the liter barrel to produce our fermentation. And for me, this is very, very important to produce real high quality wines. All the people and all the team that working with me here in the winery is very, very important, and is part of the terroir. Again, our wines express very well our terroir. For me, very high sensation. When you open the wine from high altitude, it's possible find this special condition, this flavor, these aromas, this color in these special wines.
Thank you, Alejandro. I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's your time.
Okay,
But that was a beautiful
waiting
presentation.
Thank you, and we're waiting here to share the wines and share some asado in some moment. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ale. Gracias.
Fantastic. Bye-bye.
So now we're going to cross the Andes, and we're going to cross the Andes with what I like to call a human bridge. Aurelio Montes Jr. Represents his winery Montes, which has realities in both Argentina as well as Chile. Caiquén in Argentina and Montes in Chile. Of course, it's a family company per se, but there's a board of directors that I know that Aurelio has to work very hard to prove himself for. And he's one of the ways he's working hard today is exposing himself to the elements. Congratulations to both Ale and Aurelio, because I remind all our viewers here from the Northern Hemisphere that these guys are in the middle of a very cold winter. So Aurelio, I won't make you stand out in the cold too much longer. So why don't you go ahead and tell us where you're standing and what Montes is all about.
Well, hello Lars, and hello everyone. From this beautiful view of Colchagua and Apalta Valley in Chile in a very cold winter, I'm going to be really happy to talk about Chile. But as you just said, I had the opportunity, the unique experience to live also in Argentina. I spent more than 5 years producing wines in Argentina. So for most of the people that know Chile and Argentina, maybe they think that it's the same country, it's the same area. And even if we are so close, this huge range of mountains called Andes makes, so different soil, so different climate, culture, and of course people. So that's why for me, working in both sides of the Andes has been really, really a unique experience. So let's go. I'm gonna share this presentation. Well, here it's only to show you on the map, you know, that how close we're, especially from Mendoza, but and so different. Okay, talking about Montes, Chile is a unique and amazing country. When you talk about diversity in terms of terroir, Chile, it's amazing. We have so many different type of terroir, depending where you are, in the north, in the south, near the coast, near the Andes. So if I have to describe Chile in one word, I will say diversity. So, so people that know us as Montes, they know that our DNA, it's, you know, inside our DNA, it's searching for new places. So in Chile, there's so many new places to be discovered. But since we started, especially with my father, that he started with the company in the year 1988, we have been together trying to find new, beautiful places to produce premium wines from Chile. So the first place that my father discovered was Apalta, that is located in Colchagua, 100 miles south from Santiago, and in the central area in Chile. And this is Apalta. Apalta is it's a kind of microclimate. It's a new DO. In the last 2 years, we got the new DO of Apalta, so we're very, very happy. But Apalta, not everything in Apalta is good. And why my father got in love with this area was of this. When you look at the back, you're gonna see, you know, the river, the Tinguiririca River, that comes from the Andes Mountain, that irrigate the valley. So here, Apalta, we split in two places. One, we call the flat area. The flat area, it's not good for grapes. It's good for plums, for cherries, for other things, because it's too rich. But my father realized that the place to plant was here, in the yellow line. It's what you're seeing in my back. So we decided to start planting in the semi-slope because it was the first plantation ever being planted in a kind of slope. But then we realized that the quality was so good that we decided to go even higher and higher, and that's why we decided to plant in a very steep slopes where we got an amazing, amazing result. Colchagua also is a very unique valley in terms of diversity, because Colchagua goes from the Andes up to the ocean. So depending where you're planted, what kind of wines you're gonna get. And only 40 kilometers from here, closer to the ocean, we have another vineyard that called Marchihue, and in that area, we get a completely different style of wine. So it's so wonderful, because at the end of the day, as a winemaker, when we do the blends, we have different components where we can play. Apalta, for me, that is in the center valley, in this micro valley, unique valley, we call is the racing horse, elegant, you know, very, very sophisticated. Then the other vineyard that's closer to the ocean, it's not close to the ocean, it's closer to the ocean. We get much more, you know, vibrancy, bigger tannins, deeper color. So blending both, you get unique blends, unique, you know, personality in terms of elegance and power. That's why we're so established in Colchagua. We're really in love. Moving to different things, we have been discovering or traveling inside of Chile to many places, but I want to show you a specific, sorry, with the, a specific vineyard that we have discovered and developed. The next one is Zapallar, that it is in the north of Chile, in the north of Santiago. And why we decided to go there is because we got a quite specific condition very close to the ocean. Here we're almost over the ocean, only 11 kilometers from the ocean. So what we get there, it's the straight influence, that goes from the ocean to the vineyard. And if you look the map here, you're gonna get a very high altitude mountain, and down here another high altitude mountain. But in between there's a big gap. So the breeze coming from the ocean into the inside of the valley, it's very strong. So when you try even the berries of of the vineyard, you get the saltiness of the ocean. You can get, that's why for our Sauvignon Blanc produced from there, we macerate the skin. That we normally we don't do that. We macerate the skin with the juice to get that saltiness inside of the wine. So this is Sabayar. The bad news of all these areas is that there's not much water. We have very limited amount of water, and sorry. There we go. We have so limited amount of water that that we can't really grow too much, and that's why it's a very small and limited production. And then we decided to go even more extreme. We decided to go to some other place that had to be, that gave us something really, really special. So we decided to go to the very extreme Patagonia point. We're in the tip, of Chile, in the very, very south of Chile. This is a very funny map, but to show you that we're in Chiloé Island, that it's here. It's 1,200 kilometers south from Santiago. What you have to remember, especially when you talk to people from the United States, that here is completely opposite from what you have. Here, going to the south means rain, means cold weather. So being in Chiloé, it's almost being in Alaska. Not that extreme, but very, very extreme. Or Seattle, it's very, very extreme weather in terms of rains, in terms of temperature. But why we decide to go there? This is a small island called Mechuque. And this island, we are in a small spot, and look here, we are only 50 meters from the water. So the influence of the water here is really, really important. Here, the temperature of the water, the average is 2,000 degrees higher than near Santiago. So even we are very south here, because we are isolated, we are protected, from the big ocean from the open ocean. Here we can really make the vine grow. So this is the last, project that we had. And finally, I always like to talk about sustainable certification. We have been certified for more than 10 years, and for us as a family, it's so important. This point. To produce wine, we know that it's important, all the terroir, but we never have to forget that we live in a community and we have people around us. So we take care about environment, we take care about the use of water, we take care about our people, and of course about our community. All together makes Montes a better company, and makes that our wines, can last forever. We're a family, and one day one of my kids hopefully is going to follow my steps. So this part is really, really important for us. Okay.
Fantastic.
Thank you for the time. Thank you for inviting me to this, seminar. It's always good to be able to explain a little bit who we are and what we're doing at the vineyard.
Well done, Aurelio. Thank you. I remember being there around the turn of the century, around 1999, 2000, being up in those hills when everybody thought your father was crazy for going up there. And then when he came back from some of the different areas that he'd been in Leyda, and he talked about it like it was a new love. So it's great to see this work continuing on.
Yeah.
So next up, we have Ricardo Rivadeneira. Ricardo, you've worked in Napa, in Bordeaux, and then you came back to Chile to join your family's project, which is Viña Maqui. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that and your terroir and what you're putting in the bottle there, please.
Sure, thank you. Can you hear me well?
Can hear you great.
Great, thank you. Well, yes, I have a presentation. I selected many many good photos that I had on my computer, so I want to jump right into it. I wanted to start with some history of maquis. Hold on. Because maquis has a long track record for producing quality wines. It's been in our family since 1916, but before that, you know, maquis until 1770, it was a vineyard owned by the Jesuit priests. Around that year, they were thrown out of all the Spanish domains. Maquis was left with no owner for about 30 years. Then during the 19th century, Maquis was owned by two Chilean presidents. You know, this bridge that you can see on this photo was built by one of these presidents because they were so proud of being from Colchagua that they organized some cabinet meetings here in Colchagua. So they would bring all their ministers from Santiago to Colchagua. Here on the left, you have my great-grandfather. He was the one who bought maquis from a relative of one of these presidents. This is a watercolor. And the Hurtado, that's my mother's side of the family, it's always been wine lovers and horse lovers. So that's my great-grandfather presenting some of his best horses. That's him and his family. He's the man with the big bird on the right. That's the ladies on the family on the side of one of the rivers that surround the state. That's them on the rowing boats there. That's the old winery that my grandfather built in 1927, which was quite a revolution for Chile in that time. And here you have the new winery behind the old one. And what I really think that it's interesting about the history of maquis is that at the end, during centuries, the owners of this maquis state it's clear to me that they have fallen in love with this place and the wines that they can get from here. You know, we know for certain, for example, that almost a century ago, maquis' finest wines were based already on Cabernet Franc, which was something quite unusual for the time. And these wines, they earned a reputation. The old people that were tasting the wines made out of maquis, they remember well how these wines were very elegant wines and wines that also had the ability to age well for decades. So it's interesting, and I decided to start with the history because basically the history of maquis is a story of love for this place. Yeah, that's the family having lunch in the corridors of the house. Well, maquis is located in Colchagua, but you know that it's a very unique state. It's surrounded by two rivers, and these two rivers that surround the maquis state, they have a huge effect on temperatures. They protect us from frost damage in spring, which is obviously key, but they also lower the maximum temperatures in summer, and that is crucial to the characteristics of the wines that you get from maquis. Because, you know, the slightly cooler summers in maquis, about 2 to 3 degrees Celsius lower than many other states in the area, they really help in having much more fresh fruit aromas, more floral and fine herbal aromas than what you normally find in the area. You know, these kind of light aromas are otherwise burnt in vineyards planted in places where summers are warmer. And so it's interesting because these rivers really help us in producing wines that show a lot more freshness. That's a view of maquis. That's how the vineyards look right next to the rivers. That's one of the rivers. This photo, I took it a week ago. And that's during harvest, how it looks. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about the soils at Maquis. Soils at Maquis also have to do with the rivers, because obviously we have alluvial soils in a place like this. And we have a unique combination of a topsoil, sometimes 2 to 3 meters deep with a lot of clay, 40, sometimes almost 50% clay. But this topsoil with a lot of clay is set on deep gravel. So whenever you dig a soil pit in Maquis to survey the soils, you always find gravels at some depth. This means that the water holding capacity of this of this soil, help us to have vineyards that, if we have a normal rainfall during winter, something that it's not that common anymore, but these vineyards can be non-irrigated. Then the rivers also, because the level of the water is so much lower than our vineyards, about 10 to 12 meters lower, they act as a huge natural drainage system. And we really think that this kind of soil produces small concentrated berries, and this really helps us in producing wines that are powerful. You see the gravels there below the top soil with a lot of clay. You have another big view of a photo with a view of the soils from Maquis. And that's Xavier helping us survive, study our soils. Then I wanted to tell you a little bit about this place. Maquis it's a spot that it's full of life, and it has to do with the rivers surrounding us. It's always been a place where you can find a lot of wildlife because of the rivers, and we have decided to protect it and to make it a key element in defining what we are. We were among the first vineyards in Chile to be certified sustainable. We were pioneers in establishing biological corridors like these. These are photos of this is one of our irrigation ponds, but it's also a biological corridor, which is actually a garden with a selection of plants that can attract wildlife, and especially animals and insects that can eat the bugs that otherwise would attack the vineyard. We really believe that this natural way of managing the vineyard, so having these vineyard blocks in between biological corridors, it plays a very important role on the purity and the definition of the wines that we produce at Maquis. You see here many photos of these biological corridors and the vineyards in between. Well, also the way that, we bring about 3,000 sheep every winter so that they eat the grass, but they also, we gather them together in places where the vineyard is weaker, and so they fertilize during the night, those weaker places.
Got about a minute and a half, Ricardo.
Yes, sure. And obviously all the life related to the work that we do at Maquis. That's me saying cheers, by the way.
Salud.
Salud, yes. Then let me tell you a little bit about Cabernet Franc and Carmenere in Maquis. We have our own selections of these massal selections. We understand that both Carmeneres and Cabernet Francs from the best from different parts of the world are not clonal vineyards, but they are massal selections, which is something not that common. And we have refined our own selections of the old plant materials. And these massal selections, because the individuals there are different one from the other, we really think that this is key to the complexity of our wines. These are some of our finest bottlings: Maquis Franco, which is our finest Cabernet Franc; Maquis Lien, our finest blend; and Maquis Viola, our finest Carmenere. And then 1 minute to tell you about the Maquis style and work philosophy. For us, really everything starts at the vineyard. And because we feel that we have very balanced grapes, it's like we very rarely, almost never have the need to correct anything in the grapes. We have moderate alcohols levels, and at the end, the wines from Maquis are not what many people call author wines, but rather wines that reflect the origin of where they come from. So we have Eric Boissenot helping us with the blends. That's me working with Eric down there. And these are our wines. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ricardo. When was the winery founded? It's a historic building, but is that a newer label?
As I told you, it's been in our family since 1916, and we know that it was owned by the Jesuits in this until 1770. I don't really know when it started.
The label itself, when did you start producing?
Oh, we started, you know, that the winery was taken away from the family, like for political reasons in the early 70s. We were just left with the old family house and a small plot of land. So we started planting again vineyards and producing wines again in 2003.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you very much, Ricardo.
Thank you, Lars.
Now we're going to speak with an Englishman, Ben Gordon. We get another accent involved here, which is great. Ben is also another gent who came to South America for love, which is a wonderful story. And you've been representing large wineries, small wineries, marketing wineries all around the world, which is very cool, gives you a unique focus. And you've got a really exciting project that you've been spearheading. So please tell us about that and this really insightful look at a different aspect of Chile, please.
Perfect. Thanks, Lars. I hope you can hear me okay.
Hear you great.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, as you mentioned, just briefly to introduce myself, many people are often disappointed when you're doing a Chile and Argentina seminar and a Brit seems to gate crash. But I have lived in Chile for 15 years. I've worked in wine for close to 20 years, so for a number of years in London before that. And I'm very passionate about Chile and South America and what we're doing down here in terms of producing wines that are of fantastic quality. And I think we're getting better and better in terms of that and the recognition. My role is the managing director of Bodega Volcanes. So again, I'm surrounded by many great winemakers. Perhaps I'll give you a little bit more of a kind of commercial aspect. In terms of ourselves, as the name may suggest, Volcanes, Spanish for obviously volcanoes. So we are a 10-year-old project that is ultimately looking to reflect Chile's very unique landscape, our seismic country, and produce wines that really do have this sort of volcanic and mineral edge in terms of what we're producing. So that's what we're trying to do. We sell about 30,000 cases per year, so just under 400,000 bottles. We're focused on more of a niche. You know, we don't produce mass-produced wines, so we're looking at really 20% of Chile's sales. And we're always looking for people with a sense of adventure. You know, we're a young brand, so we know we're not a household name, so we need consumers that are willing to try something new. We produce 11 wines in total from 7 valleys, and those hit 4 different price points, from around $15 up to about $65 US retail. Very briefly, our history. 2008 is when this all began with Pilar Diaz. She's the winemaker. She was in her 20s then. She's still very young, in her 30s now. And she hooked up with a geologist to start this project back in 2008. And to see, ultimately, through a geological map and a winemaking map, to see if there were indeed links just from where vineyards were planted and volcanic soils. And indeed there were. And then the project was born. And we started producing wines in 2009 onwards. I joined in 2016 to give a sort of more commercial focus to the wines we were producing. And in 2018, we gained our sustainable certification through Wines of Chile, which is something we still hold to this day as well. With regards to Pilar, female winemaker, her mother was a winemaker as well. She was basically raised in the sampling room at Santa Carolina, where her mother was a winemaker back in the 90s. So she was always going to be a winemaker, and I love her style. She's perfect for our wines. You know, we're looking for wines that do have these unique flavors, that have minerality, and bring to life this volcanic terroir. She's not a big fan of huge oak or extraction, and I think she's ideal for the project that we're trying to produce. And Gonzalo, who is has been a consultant for us, really helping us to understand the geology, the geological side of this. You know, this is beyond terroir and a vineyard manager. This is a guy who understands rocks far better than I ever will, but has helped me to understand this project. Ultimately, within Chile, what he's helped us to identify is, in simple terms, you can divide Chile's volcanic soils into igneous intrusive rocks, which are those that have never been erupted from volcanoes, and then obviously volcanic rocks that have come out of the volcanoes themselves from eruptions. It's important to point out, Chile has 2,900 volcanoes, if you include those that are tapped over. So along with Indonesia as the most volcanic country in the world, I don't think Indonesia is making much Cabernet Sauvignon. So Chile can certainly claim to be the most volcanic wine producing country. And at the same time, our project is important to understand. It's not based on one volcano, but there's quite complex idea of the number of volcanic activity that we've had over the course of 350 million years that has created all these different soil types that we look for. What do we know about, volcanic soils? There's still a huge debate. A lot of it's inconclusive. John Sabo has perhaps to this day produced the most famous book, Master Sommelier from Canada. And he was inconclusive in terms of, no one can actually say, okay, you're on volcanic soil, this is the taste you will get. But we certainly believe, ultimately what we're trying to do is retain Chile's fantastic fruit that we have thanks to the climate, but we always want that extra minerality and volcanic soil element to come through in our wines, and ultimately to be even more prevalent as you work your way up the scale within our portfolio. So volcanic soils have certainly been in vogue for a number of years since I joined this project. So it's almost well timed in that respect. This is, I don't want to turn people into geologists immediately today, but just important for us to understand that this isn't just marketing. There's a lot of research that's gone into our project over the years. But ultimately, it goes back to what I said earlier about these two different soil types, those that are created from volcanic eruptions, and those that are ultimately still intrusive igneous rock, which is ultimately soil type that has cooled down slower below the Earth's surface rather than those that cool quicker that have come from eruptions themselves. And as I said as well, we are talking anything from modern depositions from eruptions in the last century to stuff that has happened 350 million years ago in the Paleozoic era. So this is, very complex in terms of the volcanology of our country, and it all comes down to the fact that we are on the Pacific Rim. We're on the Ring of Fire with the Nazca Plate and the South American Plate constantly rubbing together in a subduction zone to create seismic activity and ultimately magmatic activity and the volcanic activity that we have within Chile. Within our own project, ultimately obviously, some people will know that, the volcanoes today are all in the Andes. So the zone here, Zone D, is incredibly important for us because that is where the most active volcanoes are located. But also for us, Zone B is incredibly important as well. Chile, as you maybe know, has two mountain ranges, the Andes themselves and then the coastal range. And actually, the coastal range is older than the Andes. So there as well, there is a lot of intrusive igneous rock, and we have a number of vineyards that we use in Zone B as well. And in Zone A, it tends to be a lot more marine, a lot of limestone, but also there is some granite soil as well, subsoil, which is also volcanic in its elements as well. Zone C is the Central Valley itself, and that tends to be a little bit more residual soil of B and D, so less volcanic, but there will still be volcanic elements within Zone C. But we focus predominantly on B and D with our production, and a little bit in A for some of our cool climate white wines as well. So as I said earlier, we are prevalent in 7 different vineyards. So that ranges from closer to Santiago, Casablanca, Lleida for whites and Pinot, Maipo for our classic Cabernet, Rapel, which is mainly Almaue, which is definitely where we are in this Zone B I mentioned before, this area here, the coastal range, which has some fantastic andesita rocks from over 200 million years ago that still really create this unique soil type. We also have some vineyards in Maule, and then we have started working in the last few years in Bio Bio and Malleco, which are particularly interesting areas. They are very close to more active volcanoes. And you have a soil type called trumao, which is ultimately volcanic ash mixed with clay, and is very prevalent in these areas. So here are some of the volcanoes that we have in that particular area. And in brackets, you can see some of them had eruptions in the last 100 years. So this is a typical soil for Mayeco and Biobío.
2-minute warning, Ben.
Okay. In terms of our range, so we start with a reserva range. That is our opening range, if you like. We don't produce wines below that denomination in terms of quality. And there we're producing more classic style, Pinot and Sauvignon Blanc, and then 3 reds. Our Tectonia range is what we're particularly proud about as a range. I think this is the wine that the range that best displays our diversity, which I know Aurelio mentioned as well, and I'm a huge believer in Chile's diversity. And this range really does that, and a beautiful gastronomic style of small production wines from different areas within Chile. And there we have Chardonnay and Pinot Noir from the southern areas, more full-bodied Carmenère and Cabernet, and a great blend of Grenache, Petit Syrah, and Mourvèdre. And then we have standalone single vineyard wine from Maule, which is Parinacotas, Syrah Carignan Old Vines, and Igneo, which is our relatively new sort of icon wine, Petit Syrah and Petit Verdot blend. You know, our distribution is pretty global. Since I've joined, we've gone from 5 markets to 30 markets, predominantly working on a multi-channel, mainly with specialists rather than mass retail, and obviously on-premise as well being very important to us. And in the US, we currently have 3 different importers. We don't have a national importer. We're working regionally. We currently work with Vias, who very kindly set us up with Lars and the team for today. They work for us in New York and New Jersey. Novo Vino in Illinois, and American Northwest have just signed with us for the Northwest. They don't have stock yet, but that is news just in. So there you go. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight. We're a relatively new kid on the block. We're very proud of what we're doing in terms of putting sort of the volcanic soil element of Chile on the map and really pushing that idea of premium wines. And I hope you enjoy this, and it's been a pleasure to take part, and I thank you everyone for organizing it.
Well done, Ben. Thank you. Very unique perspective on Chile. Very refreshing to hear. That's cool. Volcanic area.
Thank you very much.
All right. So next, I could listen to every single one of you guys all day, and it kills me to have to cut you short because it's such great information. But next I get to introduce a guy that I actually used to listen to all day, my buddy Marcelo Papa. I was one time, had the pleasure of visiting the winery, and I was being escorted by the marketing director, and I snuck into the winery to say hello to Marcelo, and it was right around just after harvest time, and he ran with me from tank to tank, tasting different vineyard samples. And I think we got in trouble for that because we tasted probably more than we should have at that point, but it was a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, and I love Marcelo's enthusiasm and another pioneer stretching the boundaries to the north of Chile to tell us about that today. So, Marcelo, mi amigo, per favor.
Hi, Lars. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for the support of this taste of this presentation, and maybe some are tasting some wines. Could you see pretty good the image and my sound?
Yes, looks good.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that first of all, congrats for all the expositor. I think great presentation, a lot of good information, very, very interesting. And Aurelio said in his own presentation, and Ben also, Chile is a country, it's a pretty crazy country in terms of geography and climate. The diversity that we have here in the country, it's great. There are many places so different. We have many type of soil, many type of weather. We have for one side all the influence from the Andes mountain, which is huge, and also for Argentina. But then we have pretty close the influence of from the Pacific Ocean that we don't need to forget that in this ocean there are not sharks, there are penguins. So the temperature of the water is so cool. And in other areas like South Africa, Australia, or even New Zealand, the temperature of the water is different, and you get shark. So we will talk a little bit about north of Chile, Limari region. Aurelio showed the Chiloé Island. There are a little bit more than 1,500 kilometers from one point to the other. And that talks about the diversity of the country. Well, you know, where is located Chile. Let me see here. That. So Chile is pretty long. And then in the Limari region, which is pretty much in that place, we have the Limari region, which is a fantastic area surrounded by the Pacific Ocean and also by the north from the Tongoy Bay. A pretty nice area of beach and fantastic area. So I like pretty much this view that shows pretty well our geography. Here is the north, south, and we have the Andes Mountain that of course separate Chile and Argentina. Then we have the Pacific Ocean, and this is a view from the west to the east. And the coastal range is getting altitude when you are moving south, and probably in the Mayeco area is taking his peak, his tallest altitude. But here in the Limari region is almost doesn't exist the coastal range. So for that reason, the influence of the Pacific Ocean here, it's pretty strong. The vineyards are more or less 200 meters over the sea level, and the vineyards are located 18 kilometers from the Pacific Ocean. It's a fantastic area to grow Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, even other varieties, but I think that we have a treasure here for Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. We will talk from this area. Well, from this area, we produce two range of wines: Marqués, where we grow Chardonnay and Pinot, and also Amelia Chardonnay, and now Pinot Noir. Fantastic wines. And first, in terms of weather conditions, this area almost doesn't exist the coastal range. So the influence through the night is coming a huge influence, and almost every morning when you wake up, it's cloudy in the morning. And then afternoon, the clouds are started to moving from east to the west. So this area is quite particularly, and probably 50% of the day in the morning is cloudy. There are not direct sun, no blue sky. And then in the evening, you get blue sky, fantastic sunlight. So maybe an amount of sunlight enough to get good ripening process, but not enough to burn acidity, freshness for these two varieties. I like pretty much this comparison. If you look temperatures, I took good areas globally to produce Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. We took Burgundy, which is the Puligny area, Santa Maria in California, which is a pretty interesting Chardonnays on that area, Russian River, which we took the numbers of Sebastopol, which again, it's a very nice area, and Quebrada Seca, which is the place in Limari where we are. If you see, and if we take the maximum average temperature of this area, and if we concentrate on the last 60 days before picking the grapes, which is the time of the year where you really define the flavors. 60 days before picking is really critical. If you look at that, Quebrada Seca is in the green, Burgundy, it's on the gray, and if you see mostly of the 60 days, the temperature maximum average is pretty similar. Just at the end, Burgundy go a little bit down, Russian River stay high, and Santa Maria is cooler. If we go on the other map, and if you take the minimum temperatures, the same. If you go for Quebrada Seca, follow pretty similar like Burgundy. Santa Maria, even it's cooler, and the Russian River is even cooler. So the difference between day and night in Russian River is much more extreme. In Burgundy, Quebrada Seca, or Limari and Santa Maria, the temperatures are more close. So that talks that it's a pretty interesting area in terms of sun intensity and also in terms of temperature, pretty interesting for these varieties. Just think that in January, which is the warmest time of the year in this area, just 2 hours average a day, the temperature is over 24 Celsius degrees. So it's a really area where you are doing on 22, 23, 20, or on the 20s, early 20s. So I think climatically, this area is a great area for Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and I think that in the future it will be considered one of the top areas globally. In terms of soil, it's even more interesting, this area, because in Chile we don't have a lot of calcareous soils or based with calcium, but particularly in this area we have the soils, and in Quebrada Seca we have 2 series, the Quebrada Seca and the Santa Cristina. This pit is Quebrada Seca series, where we have about 40 centimeters, the first 40 centimeters of soil with 30% clay, then another 35 centimeters with 35% clay, which is interesting. I think Chardonnay and Pinot needs red clay charged by oxidized iron. I think is the type of clay that produce top quality Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And then on the subsoil, which is after 70 centimeters, we get I call it the local limestone, because it's not exactly limestone, but it's a piece of soil full of calcium carbonate. Here we have some picture, and this is Quebrada Seca, right? That plateau is Quebrada Seca, where on the top of the hills, we get the material that go down and deposit over that tiny place, which is in between Quebrada Seca and Quebrada Las Bandurrias. It's a really nice area where deposit soil from the high part of the Andes, or not exactly not the Andes, because I will show you here. This is a map of the area. Quebrada Seca is there, where is the red point, and it's quite interesting because that blue, well, we have the Limarí River, which separate Limarí in North Bank and South Bank, and those blue areas and green areas are the top of the hills from the Andes Mountain, and the blue one, this is full of primary calcium that it was under the surface of the ocean. So that primary calcium is coming from the Jurassic, and this primary calcium is coming from the Cretacic. The Cretacic calcium cover and go down on the south bank of Limarí River, and the Jurassic calcium goes down on the Quebrada Seca, which is the northern part of the Limarí River. So the soils of Quebrada Seca are quite attractive, full of clay, red clay cover or charged with the oxidized iron, and then with a secondary calcium, which is coming from the Jurassic, from the Andes Mountain. So it's a really interesting area, and it produces a style of Chardonnay and also Pinot Noir. I will say very, not new world in a style, more old world, more Burgundian, a very salty, very mineral, very low pH wine, where we ferment with barrels, of course, because it's a pretty good way to craft this style of wines. But I think with high level of acidity and wines that I really love it. I think that with Amelia we are getting fantastic scores. Last year was selected as the best white in the country. It gets 2 or 3 times 97 points. And then Marquez is getting pretty consistent 92, 93 points. And but the people that is looking for a style of more opulent, a style of Chardonnay, well, this is not the area. This is sharp, vertical, linear, high acidity, mineral. So that is the style of the Limari region.
Bravo.
So,
thank you, Marcelo. I'm sorry I've got to cut you off there, but
no, it's fine. I think I finished, and I hope that you get a clear idea of the area.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all. These were some great information, some beautiful graphics and maps. Michelle, may I launch into some questions? Michelle, you're on mute.
Sorry, you would think that I would know better after all this. Thank you for the reminder on that. Thank you to our panel. You all did just such an exceptional job. We're endlessly grateful, and you know, what amazing insights into your region. Just as a reminder, because we are getting the question, we will be providing access to a lot of the presentations that were given by our panel today in our resource center when we send out the link to the recording. So a lot of those fabulous maps and the topography and the images of the vineyards will be made available to everyone in the recording. Just a couple of questions, because I know we're running short on time, but I'm going to pull through a couple that I don't think were addressed yet completely by our panel today. There is a question with regards to the pandemic and COVID's impact on the region. In particular, you know, one of our viewers right now who has a trip planned in December and just wanting some advice as to what travel looks like to the region right now, and also maybe you can address your, you know, the winery's response to the pandemic, and just give a little illumination on how that's affecting you all there. And I think Daniel actually had indicated here that he would like to address that first, Lars, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Daniel P., are you there?
Okay, here I am.
Okay.
No, you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me? No, I don't know, because in the future, nobody knows what will happen in 4 more months or 6. Unless we get the vaccine, I think the world will be very difficult to travel abroad. And anytime you come here, especially in Argentina, from abroad, you have to stay in quarantine like 2 weeks. So if you want to travel other countries, it will be complicated. So my suggestion is not to travel now and wait until you get the vaccine. But nobody knows. Probably we will have some medicine instead of the vaccine. The things are getting very complicated, I think. At least in Argentina, it's complicated even to travel inside Argentina. There are different places where, for me, for instance, I couldn't go up to Cafayate or going away from Mendoza. So every province, every state is isolated at the moment. And I think that this will last longer. I don't know in Chile, but I believe that coming from countries like the US, where you having a larger spread of the COVID, it will be complicated. That's my view. I don't know if any other has a different opinion. But this is what I think.
My understanding is that things are pretty well locked down. I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that, but I believe South America is in just as bad a shape as North America is. So, okay, thank you. One of the questions that, a couple of the questions that I thought were interesting, and I'd want to address them both from the Chilean and the Argentine side. I know that years ago, if you, depending on your location, if you were close enough to the Andes Mountains, you could do flood irrigation. And I believe that most vineyards, most wineries, certainly quality wineries, have gotten away from that. Would you, any of the winemakers like to address the idea of irrigation there, and what, or is it flood, is it drip, or is it a greater percentage of dry farming? Or is it hard to generalize?
If you want, I can I can jump into that. I can say that generally in Chile, you have mostly, I mean, you have a lot of dripping irrigation, especially as Aurelio was saying earlier today. We've had like a decade of drought or less rainfall during winter than usual. It's interesting to hear also from the people in Argentina how in Mendoza it rains a lot less than in Colchagua, for example. We were hearing before how in some places you get maybe even less than 200 millimeters, so roughly, I don't know, 8 inches of rain during a whole year in Argentina, in Mendoza, while in Colchagua you normally get an average of, let's say, 500 to 600 millimeters. So that would be almost 2.5 times as much as in Mendoza. So in places where you have deeper soils, like I was saying in Maquis, when you have a deeper soil and soils with a lot of clay, for example, it allows, you have a good water holding capacity, and it allows at least us on years when we have normal rainfall in winter to not have to irrigate the vineyards during the whole growing season. But that, I would say, it's quite extraordinary. It's
Okay. Thank you, Ricardo. And the next question I thought was curious as well. You know, it's great to see some new developments of DOs in the different areas that are being explored on both sides of the Andes. Is Chile near a sort of classification system, or Argentina either, near a classification system for reservas or anything within the denominations that would have to do with aging or ageability of the wines or single vineyard sites? I don't know who would like to take a stab at that.
I can answer for Chile.
Great.
In Chile, we don't have any regulation that doesn't allow us to put Reserva or Gran Reserva or premium wines. So mainly consumers are the one that evaluate and define which is premium or not. So at the end, we play more with the price of the wine when we want to call them a premium or Reserva. So, but there's no regulation that we need to follow to. But I know that in Argentina is a little bit different, not much different, but they have to follow some regulation.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, in Argentina we do have a regulation regarding this Reserva and Gran Reserva, and depends on the time of aging. So we need about 1 year of aging for Reserva and 1.5 years for Gran Reserva. And in case of the whites, I think it's like 9 months on aging before release. This is what we have in a regulation made by the National Institute of Wine and Vines.
Is that a historic rule, or is it something fairly recent, Daniel?
It is something that came like, if I don't remember badly, something like 4 or 5 years ago, because we needed this regulation to go into the EU, into the European community, because they have the Reserva and Gran Reserva. It's a name that is belongs to the Spanish regulation. So they need to know what is our regulation regarding Reserva and Gran Reserva.
Okay, great. That's helpful. And I think, Michelle, if you agree, I think we'll call it a day there. I know that some of these questions we can also answer in follow-up. But I think if we get into different styles of Malbec or Carmenere, we could be here for another 2 days. I'd love to have this whole group write a great book or film a movie.
Yeah, you know, just out of respect for everybody's time, we'll go ahead and wrap today and say goodbye, good evening, good afternoon. And just thank you once again for joining us and being part of our weekly dialogue on what's happening within the global wine market and helping to illuminate for our audience what's happening with respect to Chile and Argentina. So we appreciate your time. And again, look out for the recording and the link. Everything can be found at sommconusa.com, and you can also follow us on our social media handles on Instagram and LinkedIn. So thank you again, everyone. Lars, wonderful job as always, and to our panel, we really appreciate all of you.
Thank you. And look for the recaps in the SOMM Journal and tasting panel as well, and reviews.
Thanks for all the support. Huh?
Okay,
yeah, thank you, everybody.
Todos.
Muchas
Great
gracias.
presentations by the entire panel.
Thank you, everyone.
Muchas gracias.
Chao, adiós.
Chao, muchas gracias. Thank you very much.
Bye, bye, Lars.
Vale. Ciao, Marcelo.
Ciao.
Bye.
Thanks, Michelle. Cheers, Lars.
Next time
Ciao.
with espresso.
Ciao, Marcelo. Ciao, Dani.
Ciao, Jerry.
Chao, chao, queridos.
Ciao,
Chao.
ciao.
Cuídense, gusto de verlos.
Chao, Jere. Chao, Daniel. Chao, hasta luego. Gracias por todo.
Chao.
Chao, Lars.
Chao, chao, amigos. Gracias.
Ciao, Lars. Ciao, Michelle.
Chao,
Bye.
Norman.
Gracias.
Chao,
Chao,
Ale.
Michelle. Thank you. Chao, chao.
Chao.